Today we are talking about one of the best players in the NHL, a guy who's kind of entered the news cycle as a non-story. Like, I'm not gonna lie, this doesn't really mean all too much, especially considering the status of his contract and when he's eligible to sign an extension, etc. So, while this isn't the most important thing in the world, it still was talked about. And there were some posts made and there were some discussions going on, so I wanted to throw my 2 cents in with this situation as well. Today we are talking about Edmonton Oilers forward Leon Draisaitl. Because when it comes to Draisaitl and the way his contract is shaping up, I think there's a very good idea floating around that says that Draisaitl is on one of the best contracts in the NHL. He's making $8.5 million a year. This was an 8-year deal that started back in 2017-18, immediately off of his ELC. And in this time frame, Draisaitl was a mere 70-ish point player in the National Hockey League. Now, back in this time frame, you could say, wait a minute, why are they paying him $8.5 million? He is just under a point-per-game caliber player. That's going to be a huge amount of money to commit to a guy that can't even get 80 points, and then the season after, he scored 100. So, Draisaitl immediately proved all the naysayers wrong, and he became an immediate stud for the Oilers, especially when Connor McDavid ended up missing some time throughout the years. Leon Draisaitl has always been there, and he has always been productive as a result. It's kind of crazy because the 6'2", 207-pound left-handed center forward is now 27 years old, which is kind of nuts considering it feels like yesterday that Draisaitl and Bennett and Ekblad and all of them were drafted in the 2014 draft. But no, that was almost a decade ago. So Draisaitl, he's 27, actually turning 28 at the end of October, so early happy birthday to Draisaitl. His contract, as we had said, goes on till the end of 24-25, meaning that at the time of recording this audio, he is approaching the second last year of his deal. $8.5 million is a lot of money, but when you consider the fact that Draisaitl has had multiple 100-point seasons, a 128-point season last year, add on to that multiple 50-goal seasons and a playoff run in 21-22 where he had 32 points in 16 games played, this is legitimately one of the top players in the world. And $8.5 million is just a shade under what he should be worth if he were to be negotiating a brand new contract right now. That caliber of play supersedes $8.5 million by quite a lot. Which is why, when you talk about the future of Leon Draisaitl, this has always been an interesting conversation to bring up, because for Connor McDavid, that guy's expiring 25-26. Leon Draisaitl expires 24-25, so this time, 2 years from now, Leon Draisaitl's current contract will be over. He'll be eligible to sign an extension by the time free agency starts next year, so 2024 July, that's when Draisaitl will be able to sign again. And when it comes to his future, this is the entire conversation that has started out. You had yourselves a quote made by Draisaitl on the 32 Thoughts podcast. It was the interview done with Elliot Friedman, and what I wanted to do in this video was just kind of go over what it was that Draisaitl said. We're going over onto this article on NHLTradeTalk.com. Draisaitl has a dodgy but direct response to the Oilers contract query. The article has the quotes made, and it's easier for me to screenshot, put it on the screen. The link is going to be in the description of both the audio podcast as well as the article. It makes some sense that media members would start asking questions of Draisaitl, whose contract is due first before McDavid's, if he's given any thought to his future. While speaking on the 32 Thoughts podcast, he was asked and responded, "I knew that question was coming." He then said, "Of course, I've given thought to my future, but I'm going to give you the most cliche answer right now. I'm in Edmonton right now, I want to win a Stanley Cup in Edmonton, and we'll see what happens." And I like this article a lot, because immediately after it says, in one breath, Draisaitl gave the most direct and obvious response that anybody could give. Of course I'm thinking about my future. In the next breath, he committed to nothing while giving no sense that he was contemplating a trade. He's not about to give the media something they could run with as the Oilers try to keep focus and capture a Stanley Cup. He's also not about to send the fan base into panic mode, which can easily happen in a hockey-crazed market like Edmonton. And this is exactly why I said this isn't really that important of a video topic. The guy isn't eligible to sign an extension for a year, and the comments that he made are very cookie-cutter and basic. Sure, he's saying he's committed to winning a cup with the Oilers. He says he's also thinking about his long-term future. But he's also saying that he is in Edmonton right now. And that phrasing is great, because it doesn't close the door on either option. If Draisaitl eventually becomes a free agent in 2025 and he goes to another team, you could look at these comments from 2023 and say, yeah, he said right now. That's what he meant, right now. Later on, he's no longer with the Oilers. Okay, that makes sense. But if he resigns, it's like, all right, he is committed and he's still with Edmonton. Back then, he was thinking about the Oilers. Later on, he's still thinking about the Oilers. Nice. This article even says that the phrasing of right now might be somewhat alarming to some Oilers fans. Of course, nobody is gonna get any definitive conclusions from the way that Draisaitl made this comment, and of course, that's by design. It was kind of intended that way. No commitment either way. If he changes his mind in the future, he decides to go somewhere else, then it's not like these comments in 2023 contradict that. But for right now, all we can do is really focus on Draisaitl in terms of the scope of the NHL today. Because the Edmonton Oilers have been a pretty alright team, and I'm going to say alright, not good, not great, not bad, because while they certainly have had their amazing individual performances last season, 3 100-point players, that almost never happens, you still have a whole bunch more that this team needs to accomplish in order to be taken seriously. Not necessarily because making the third round and losing against the Colorado Avalanche is a bad thing, but because making the third round only to immediately get swept kind of changes the narrative as to how your seasons and how your tenures have been going. Draisaitl and McDavid are 2 of the best players in the world. You have Zach Hyman, who is an 80-point guy. Nugent Hopkins, a 100-point guy. You could debate that a lot of these players only got their high numbers because they were playing with McDavid and Draisaitl, but at the end of the day, you have talented point producers. So if you have guys who are at the pinnacle of the NHL in terms of producing, and they can't barely get past the second round without winning a game beyond that, it makes for a very strange and somewhat laughable reputation. Sure, nobody laughs at Draisaitl getting 128 points. Nobody laughs at Draisaitl for getting 110 points multiple years. Nobody's going to disrespect McDavid for being 150-point caliber, and if he does it again, that's not going to be surprising. But for the Oilers themselves as a whole, this team needs to get out of that funk of lackluster defensive play and lackluster bottom six play. They need to get past the second round, and they need to look good in the third round too. Once McDavid and Draisaitl win the cup, then okay, all bets are off the wall. Whatever happens, happens. Who cares? The Oilers have Stanley's Grail. It was kind of the same thing with Ovechkin. He was such a legend. He was worshipped as a god amongst Washington Capitals fans because he kind of was one. And he maybe still is, but when the Ovechkin-Crosby debates were happening, the argument always was, okay, well, Crosby's got 3 Stanley Cups. I mean, he had 1 for a good chunk of that debate's time frame, but by the time 2017 rolled around, he had another 2 cups under his belt, and it was like, okay, well, there is the debate. It's settled. Crosby has won the championship, Ovi hasn't. And then the Capitals won the next year. So that entire thing, sure, you could say Crosby has more cups, but at least Ovechkin has a cup. And that was the crowning achievement. A guy who has worked for so much, who has been so good, finally getting his due. And that's coming from a guy who has had a 65-goal year. Ovechkin scores 40 goals in his sleep and 50 goals when he wakes up and is groggy in the morning. That's how good of a talent he is, and McDavid and Draisaitl, they have not had the benefit of the doubt of getting that Stanley Cup just yet. I think it's probably going to happen. Like, there's no way to believe that McDavid is going to go his entire career without getting a Stanley Cup. Even Jack Eichel has one. But at the end of the day, the Oilers need to be the ones pulling their weight here, and you could say that they have an extra 2 years-ish to get that done. You talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs and their window closing down. Well, Edmonton and Oiltown, their window is also in a pretty interesting spot in terms of where it's going to be in a few years too. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about the way Leon Draisaitl talked about his future with the Edmonton Oilers? No commitments, no promises, no saying he's going to leave, no saying he's going to stay, just focused on the here and now. Right now he is here at Edmonton, and right now he wants to win a cup. We'll talk about the contract more as the years go on because he'll be eligible to sign an extension in a year. But for now, let me know your thoughts in the comment section. How do you feel about Draisaitl talking about his contract with Friedman on 32 Thoughts? Link is in the description to both the audio and the article we pulled the quotes from. I hope you enjoyed this Vrishaj Ross 99. And bye.